I'm alive.
Are we?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Property Experts Live at 5, brought to you live on YouTube and also repurposed in a podcast format. Myself and Ben Richards will be sharing our weekly highs and lows of what we get up to in our various businesses, turning over 5 figures, 6 figures, and some 7-figure businesses. Today, we've got a jam-packed agenda. And for those of you that are listening on the podcast, it's the 24th of May today. And without further ado, we'll be talking through some of our fellow business owners and what we've been celebrating this week for our business owners. We'll be talking about risk, managing risk. And Ben and I had a chat about risk appetite. Was it yesterday? It was yesterday. We'll be talking about investor relations and contingencies. I attended UKREiiF. I've been in Leeds this week, and I will be sharing my first visit to Leeds. Ben, are you getting some feedback?
Yeah, when you touch your mic. So just,
okay.
Yeah, hands off.
So, off the back of a 3-day trip up to Leeds, first time I've ever been to Leeds, actually a beautiful city. I'll be sharing about what that property event is and why you should go next year. Progress update at Thame, progress update at Marlow, both of our projects which are well underway in delivery. If you were on our site day, you would have actually seen these sites in the flesh. Increasing your prices, why we might be increasing our prices. Chat with the guys from Raising Finance Talks, which I haven't heard of yet, and Ben's going to be sharing a bit about that. And one of the main topics at UKREiiF was the planning system and the planning process. So maybe a bit of a rant later, and I'm sure we'll be sharing a lot of pain points of our listeners. And as always, please do ask questions during the live, and we will answer them live, or alternatively after, and we'll get to them next week.
We've got to have at least one rant a week, haven't we? It wouldn't be right. There's still a bit of fuzz every now and again on your mic, but
I'm not sure that is. Leave it with me. I'll work on it while we talk about the first topic.
Cool, nice. So yeah, I actually put this on the agenda this week because yesterday we were fortunate enough to share a rebranding event of one of our fellow friends. Now, Jack actually went to school with Alex. He's been running Sillence Hurn building consultancy for the last 5 years through various different, change of people and guises and different services and offerings. But we've both worked with Sillence Hurn as a developer. They've been our monitoring surveyor. They've done project management and QS work for us. And Aura have also worked as the architect on some of their projects. So, it's been a good relationship over the last 5 years. And for me, what I've enjoyed seeing most is the way that the company's grown. And that's really what I want to shout out to Alex and the team. He's only really been going 5 and a bit years. He's close to, I think, turning over about £2 million. They've got a team of about 23 people, I think, now. And they've just rebranded. So I think the Sillence part of the Hurn is no longer part of the business. And the name wasn't really fit for purpose in terms of how they want to grow moving forward and the aspirations that they want to of the business they want to grow into. So they had a big launch event last night down in Southampton, really nice venue. And I just wanted to shout out to all the business owners out there that are struggling. It is a grind. For Alex to make it 5 years and be in the position that he's in is no mean feat. So massive shout out to them. I'll now oh no, wrong one. Oh bugger! I've messed up my clicks. But anyway, Sillence Hurn building consultancy is now called Horde. And you will see a lot of posts and promotion about that new transition shortly if you follow Alex and Sillence Hurn and if you continue to work with him. But they've got big aspirations, big plans for the future. So massive shout out to them. And I didn't want to not shout out another of our sort of acquaintances, Nick, and his company Venues by Bespoke. They actually hosted the event last night down in Southampton. It was amazing. There was a magician, which I was absolutely blown away with. I haven't got his name card here, but you see these things on Instagram and you think, I'm not going to get caught out by that. Or they say, write down a word, and you write down a word thinking, they're never going to get this. And then 2 seconds later, they've got it. And you're like, I just blown. Yeah, my mind was blown. So it's, really good food, really good venue, really good hosting, really well set up. And if anyone's looking for big events, both corporate, weddings, business days, outings and team building days, that type of thing. Then Nick and his team at Venues by Bespoke have some incredible events to offer you. So do get in touch with them or us if you want an introduction.
Did you hear the meaning behind the word Horde?
No, I didn't actually. No.
Okay.
Enlighten
It's
me.
a cohesive group of people that are unified around a common goal.
Very good. A horde of people. Okay, nice. Yeah, I like it. I mean, they've got a lot of different parts of the business that are constantly growing. Everything to do with building consultancy, project management, construction, after sales. Commercial property, resi property. So yeah, I can understand. I think the circle, the O in the Horde, is going to be all of the various different kind of offerings that they've got to offer. And it was a really, really good event. And best of luck with the new business name. Cool. Risk and managing risk. Yeah, we did have a chat. I'd be interested to hear what you have to touch on that.
Yeah, so coincidentally, we obviously had a chat about it last night at Alex's event about risk change and when you start your business journey to potentially now how risk appetite might be different. And I was chatting it through with the guys on the Ground Up pod also about the sort of risk and how it changes or alters. And I think one thing that is relevant to our business is we are delivering several projects. And they're all similar sizes, but then they're not the same size as when we started out. So when we were delivering maybe 6 1 million GDV sites, and then we're now delivering 6 5 million GDV sites, I think the risk is similar because you're never doing one scheme that can offset the balance and kilter of the value across the board. So I just thought it'd be relevant to bring it up because we always talk about project to risk. So stress testing the gross development values, stress testing the build, stress testing the duration, looking at market sensitivity. But equally, you should also look at the business risk, like all of your projects collectively and where the risk is at across the projects. And that's why I think growing, we've seen it before. It was actually Jake was talking to me last night. He said, what normally happens in development, someone gets confident and then does a skyscraper and realizes that their confidence exceeded and surpassed them. And he said what he likes about us is, we've gotten bigger, but we're still doing things that we can handle, which is, I believe quite true. But
it's stepping stones, hasn't it? Really, sort of each project has got bigger, and now we're in a place where we're delivering stuff that is actually like pretty comfortable and actually a really good sweet spot for us. Whereas we've sort of realised that we were doing maybe projects that were slightly too small, but that's always been it was a stepping stone to get to where we are now, and we've sort of not necessarily bitten off more than we can chew.
Completely agree.
Your mic's still a bit bad. It might be worth just going onto your laptop and just seeing how that works, or muting yourself for a bit. I just wanted to, because there was another thing that I did add to the slides, and I thought was really useful. And it was something that our non-exec director talked us through not too long ago. And it was actually the sort of expected value of risk. And there's always risks, and there's permutations, and there's costs to those risks. And a good way of reviewing the actual sort of value of those risks is by taking the probability of that risk happening, looking at what that costs, and then timesing the cost by the probability. So your expected value, expected risk is the cost times the probability of it happening, not necessarily just the cost of the risk, if that makes sense. Because if you looked at every risk in its individuality and just thought, oh my god, if that happens, or the risk is £100,000 if this goes wrong, you're going to be making different decisions. Whereas in reality, the risk is £100,000 times the probability of it, which may only be a 5% chance if it's a risk of a planning application being rejected and you've got 75 grand's worth of sunk costs in the planning. Well, okay, but it's, yes, you lose it if the 75 grand comes in, but that's if it's 100% chance of it happening, and that's not the case. So yeah, always look at your cost times the probability of those risks happening, and that's actually the expected risk or expected value of those risks. Cool. Anything else you wanted to? I mean, one of the other things we spoke about last night actually was risk in terms of your appetite to risk. And I'm certainly finding, as I'm getting older and I'm having kids and family and stuff like that, my appetite for risk is getting lower. You know, I started off at a position where, you know, the world is your oyster, and you know, you're hungry to take on more and to leverage higher. Whereas I am finding that the older I get, the more I want to kind of deleverage and de-risk. And I think that's quite common, where, you know, we actually work with a lot of investors that aren't as sort of hungry and willing to take risks as we are, and just want a bit more security. And yeah, I'd be surprised if it wasn't quite a normal thing.
Yeah, agreed. I think one of the main reasons for that is because when you're of age, you haven't got the time to recoup or make more, you know, comfort money. The older you get, the less time you have. So, you know, fundamentally, you can take more risks at a younger age because you've got more time and energy ahead of you.
Yeah, very true. Cool. On to our boardroom, which we've mentioned numerous times. We mentioned last week that we had someone else join the boardroom, which is great. If you're interested in joining and growing and scaling your development business up to the next level, then do comment boardroom below and we can send you through some details. Daniel, who's on the screen, actually reached out to us, not necessarily just about the boardroom group, but him and his business partner, Vlad, wanted some one-to-one consultancy, and it was really great to have a conversation with Dan and Vlad earlier today, as we sort of onboarded them into our sort of one-to-one consultancy services, added them into our community, XP community WhatsApp group, so they can start throwing in questions there and getting wider experience from our wider network and community in terms of responses. But yeah, they've got some exciting stuff going on in Newport in Wales, looking at some mixed use schemes, looking at what's best in terms of how to chop them up and whether to do service to get accommodation or HMOs or just straight ASTs, and how that blends with the commercial part of the business, part of the development, and various other bits and bobs. So we had an hour intro call today. They said, thanks again for the session, really valuable, and looking forward to receiving the resources. So, you know, not only do they get access to our experience and knowledge base, but actually we've spent the last 7 years building various analyzers, stack appraisals, business templates and resources, and all the stuff that we discuss on the call. You know, they can have access to, and we can send that across to them. So yeah, hopefully they got a lot of value out of it. I'm pretty sure they did, and they've booked in for a few more sessions after this. So looking forward to catching up and hearing about the progress on their sites later this in the next couple of weeks. Cool. Investor relations and contingencies. This always comes up. You know, how much contingency is enough? You know, we spoke about it before, whereby, you know, sort of when you're out of the ground with new builds, you'd like to think that a 5% contingency is enough. If you're working with heritage assets and listed buildings, you know, you're probably going to need 20%, 25%, you know, maybe more in some cases, depending on the situation. But one thing that's happened this week and popped up, and you know, he's probably listening, but we've had to discuss with one of our investment partners about bringing some additional funding into one of the schemes. There's a slight overrun on costs, but what the biggest issue that we've got is that our lender, we've actually stripped this asset out. It's actually our project in Muswell Hill. We've stripped the asset out. We can see all of the structure. There's very, very few unforeseens. We've locked in a JCT contract fixed price with the contractor, but even though we've mitigated some of those unforeseen risks by signing the contract whilst having walked around the site with the contractor and removed some of that risk, our lender still wants a 10% contingency on top of that JCT contract, which basically inflates not only it just inflates everything. You know, effectively, yes, we know we're slightly over budget with our contract value, but then we're inflating that even more with our lender asking for 10% contingency, which we think is way more than's needed. We've tried to push back and sort of try to reduce that contingency, which means that we would have to inject a smaller amount of money at this point. But effectively, they're not allowing us to draw down any further funds until we've secured the additional funding to effectively buy down, you know, their leverage, which it's not a great place to be. And it's, I guess this is one of the cons of working with banks. There's a lot of red tape and a lot of process. It goes up to credit and they say, oh, no, we're not having any of this. We need to de-risk our position. And that comes back down to us. But, we've got a great bunch of investment partners that we work with. And having open and frank conversations about the situation where you've got a couple of solutions and you find a pragmatic approach and a way forward is all we really ask for, really. You can't ask for much more than that, and that's the way we've headed. So we found a solution this week. Things are now progressing, and looking forward to pushing forward that site and continuing the drawdowns from our lender, because we need it, and that's what it's there for. That's what gets the job done. Cool. UKREiiF, how was it?
Up the reef. So the only comparable event that I have to UKREiiF is actually MIPIM, which any of our followers that have watched episodes in March would have heard Ben and I talking about us going to the south of France for the MIPIM Cannes event. The weather wasn't as good, but the event was definitely, in my opinion, head and shoulders above the sort of quality that we could get out of it. In MIPIM, 1 out of the 10 of the people that you might bump into might actually be relative to the UK property market, whereas in UKREiiF, everyone is relative to the UK property market. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. All of the talks, so the photo of the talk that you can see there, which was sponsored by Lloyds Bank, was titled Supporting SME Developments in the UK. They had someone very high up in Homes England. They had the chairman of the House Building Federation, and they also had a developer called the Dealey Group, who have been around for 85 years. And just that conversation, that hour alone, I learned more than pretty much any event I've ever been to in London. And definitely any talk that I've seen in south of France. And there was plenty of talks. There was talks around AI. There was round tables. There was talks about repurposing retail spaces. There was talks about more strategic stuff, quite political. There's quite a lot of political movement. Pretty much every corner that you walked into, you saw someone representing Labour and sort of picking up what they need to do, potentially subject to the election, which has been brought forward. But I massively thoroughly enjoyed it and thought it was well worthwhile. It was a really well put together event. They had free umbrellas on the day that we unexpectedly had rain all day. The way that it's functioned is everywhere within the venue, you don't pay for soft drinks. So when you're having meetings, it's kind of, you don't have to worry about, who's going to get this or whatever it is. You just sit down and the coffees and the teas and the water's free, which is brilliant. It's just a very seamlessly well put together event. I had the privilege to talk on a panel predominantly around limitations for SME developers, and we talked at length about planning, and we'll come on to that on the planning slide. But I loved it. I said to Ben, we need to take the rest of the team, definitely going next year. And kudos to the people that pulled it together, because it was really a great event. Got a few good freebies as well. Got some new coffee mugs and bits and bobs to add to the branded collection, which is good fun. I think my brother did a lot better at me than getting the freebies, because he was probably wandering around a little bit more aimlessly than I was. I was pretty back to back throughout the whole 3 days. But it was really good. It was super good. Another sort of thing to touch on is Ben and I have got an exit product with a bank, and we've been struggling to get any feedback or response from them. And I met with someone that was their key relationship manager on Tuesday, and he just put a word in softly into the business, and then they sort of started handling it a little bit quicker and came back to us. So sometimes it's not necessarily going to always meet new people, but to better relationships with people that you're already working with, but to climb slightly higher up the tree to get a bit more pressure pushed down. So thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely going next year, maybe even replacing MIPIM for me, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I'm gutted I missed out. I was too busy having an endoscopy. So next year, hopefully, I'm not doing that. But I'm gutted, because it does sound amazing. And it sounds like in MIPIM there's so much more around the world stuff going on, like stuff that isn't really relevant at all to you. Whereas obviously UKREiiF is all about the UK property market and the infrastructure market, and specifically lined up to what we do. So, you know, everywhere you look, there's going to be things that will be interesting. You know, whether it's your patch or not is another thing, but it's all quite relevant. So yeah, gutted I missed out. Cool. Progress update. Where are we on Thame? Some exciting photos in front of you for those that are watching on YouTube. And for those that are listening on the podcast, what I'm showing is a wall with some gas meters on, which may not sound interesting. But this is always a bit of a sigh of relief, really, for me, because the utilities are always the thing that takes absolutely forever. So actually, this gas process with Cadent Gas has been a really smooth process. You know, they turned up when they said they were going to earlier this week. We've sort of temporarily put up well, not temporarily, it's a permanent wall, but we've installed the section of wall in which the gas meters are going on early, so that we can get them in. And now we've got the other thing which unlocks the rest of the utilities, so the electrics and the water connections, which is the postal addresses. So you can't really make progress your electrical and your water connection applications without having fixed postal addresses. And it's been an absolute nightmare with our local council and street numbering team for this project. I mean, I say it's been a nightmare, it's not been a nightmare for me because Christine has been dealing with it, but you know, it's taken a long time to get it done. But well done, Christina, for getting it over the line. I know it was an absolute battle. But anyway, you know, this, for those people that haven't gone through this process yet, this is the type of thing that you get out off the back of it. So you submit your application to the local council and the street numbering team. You go back and forth saying, like, this is what we want it to be, how we want it to be numbered. And the issues that we have with this scheme is that it's a phased approach. We don't have planning approval for some of the properties. And therefore, it's just a little bit more complicated than your standard. Here's a block of 10 flats which we're building. This is the order in which they're installed. Here's 10 addresses. It is quite a bit more complicated on this site, but we've had to shift around the commercial tenants as well. So what was kind of Unit 6A is now going to be Unit A. And we've got another tenant moving into Unit B, which used to be the former Unit 6. And the reason for that is that the street numbering council team didn't want any mix of Unit 1s and Flat 1s and Unit 2s and Flat 2s and all this sort of stuff. They wanted a completely separate, because it's the same block. They were like, oh, the Royal Mail people will get confused, which I think is absolutely useless. But anyway, it is what it is. So we've had to go with letters for the commercial parts of the building, and we've got our Flat 1, Flat 2, Flat 3, Flat 4, St Andrew's Court for the rest of the numbering system. But it is a process you want to start as soon as possible. It does have a knock-on effect with your utilities, so the sooner you can get that resolved, the better. But yeah, lots of good progress on Thame. By the end of this month, we'd have made really good progress, and we would have had finished the top floor flats and mist coated throughout, kitchens going in, bathrooms pretty much finished, and yeah, we'll start to see it coming together nicely.
If you wanted a deep dive on Thame, head over to season 1, episode 37.
Yeah, nice, good shout out. Yeah, we go like an hour, I think, don't we, into the numbers, the details, the processes, the phasing. Yeah, well worth a watch. Cool. And then Marlow. So Marlow started 2 weeks ago, and we're already seeing really, really good progress. I mean, it's surprising actually how big a difference just getting up the stud partitions make. You can start to see the space, all of, you know, where the en-suites are going, how the volumes feel within each of the bedrooms and kitchens and bathrooms and all this sort of stuff. So scaffolding's up. What I haven't got on screen is the fact that I think we would have had by the end of today one of the dormers, new dormers installed, and there are 2 more after that. So by the end of next week, I think we'll have all of those dormers in and sort of pretty much watertight for the extension on the loft. And then the contractor's already asking me for kind of bathroom designs and tiling and all this sort of stuff. So I need to get a wriggle on in terms of finalizing what I want from those interiors. But yeah, really good progress this week. A few issues with some of our insurances because our lender wants us to increase the contract. I mean, this is something stupid, actually. I'm not sure I've told you this, Jack, but normally when you've got contractors all risk insurance, it's for the price of the contract. That's the contract works, and that's what they're insuring. What Think Property Finance want is a contractor's all risk insurance for the full £800,000 development costs, which includes the utilities, includes the sales costs, includes the warranty provision, includes everything, which is ludicrous because that's not what contractors all risk insurance is for. But apparently it's a policy of theirs, a credit policy, and they're making the contractor increase their insurance level to 800 grand from what was 500 grand. So a little bit frustrating, really, if I'm honest, but we are where we are. That's what they want, and we have to provide it to them. So just waiting on getting an updated quote or an updated insurance policy from the contractor on that.
And for Marlow, it's Series 1, episode 48, when we talk about what we were buying, what the site looks like.
Nice. Loving the stats. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you very much. Please do rate us on Spotify. And if you could leave us just a very, very quick review on Apple, that would be amazing, because it would push it out there a lot further. We do get some amazing feedback on these. We like giving value. We hope that you're getting value. And in return, we just ask that you share it with someone, rate us and review us. It really goes a long way. Cool. Increasing your prices. This was something that I wanted to put on there. We are increasing our prices. We know it sucks, but we're still the best around. That's one of the snippets I found online. But it's always something, as a service-based business owner, you do worry quite a lot about increasing your prices. Will we lose customers? How much do we increase it by? Do we increase it at all? But fundamentally, inflation is there. It's been super high over the last couple of years. And you can't just continue to keep your pricing stagnant. And this actually came about, and this topic came about because in XP surveys, I had to have a conversation this week with two guys. They're probably listening. They've been on our site tour. We've shouted them out numerous times, but they do a lot of they request a lot of surveys from us, and we've been servicing them over the last couple of months. But last week we did a review of all of the projects that we've been working on with them, looking at our hourly rates, how long it took us to do, what the travel times were, because effectively they're down on the south coast and it's a bit of a trek for us. But effectively, kind of all the projects that we did for them were, at best, kind of making a small amount of profit, nowhere near the amounts that we want to be hitting, and quite a few of them were making a relatively substantial loss, to be fair. So we had to have that conversation. We tried to provide a finance structure, a pricing structure that kind of worked for them. Realistically, we're going to have to increase that by about 10% to make it work for both parties. And again, it's about having that open and frank conversation. They understood the position. I think we've kind of met, or we will sort of meet sort of in the middle, something that works for us and something that works for them. And that's what it's all about. They said they love working with us, the team, the speed in which we deliver their surveys, and the service is exactly what they want. But at the moment, the price just isn't sustainable for XP surveys as a business to kind of sustain. So yeah, it's about having those conversations. You're always a bit worried about having those price sensitive conversations, but they're absolutely a must. My other point on the screen about an early structure stroke established structure is actually more something that we've done in Aura. And to a certain degree in XP surveys, and we'll have to look at that going forward. But early in Aura's business, I was very, very keen to just have a fixed standard rate. I think it started back in the days at £75 an hour, and it went to £85, and then at 100. And actually, I think we're still at about £100 an hour. That's what we were at. And that was across the business. But as you get more management in place, you get more senior and junior, you get a difference between kind of senior and junior management, and your business starts to grow. What normally happens is you move more into more of an established pricing structure where actually hourly rates are priced in sort of bandings. So you might get a direct, in a solicitor's firm, you have a director that might be on X amount. You might have a paralegal who might be on X amount, and those hourly rates vary. And I think that's what happens, I think, as your business grows and you get more structure and sort of hierarchy within the business. So Aura is now moving more into a sort of established pricing structure where it is a senior architect is going to be X amount, a more junior architect is going to be X amount. And I'd like to think that it kind of blends out around what it used to be. But it just means that if a senior architect is doing lots of drawing work and charging a higher amount, you know, it's being offset by somebody that's a part 1 or part 2 that's a lower amount, and the sort of the levels sort of balance out a little bit more. And that brings me on to some hourly rate stuff. So if you're working in any business, or you know, certainly service-based businesses like we do, you're going to want to have a look at your hourly rates per person. And we use this sort of spreadsheet here, which is, it's just an example. I've typed in some sort of figures at the front end in terms of salaries for each individual within the business. You're looking at adding your national insurance on top of that, which is about 13%. Actually, might have gone up to 13.5%. This might be wrong. Your pension, which as a standard is probably about 3%, and then actually that's your annual cost for that individual person within the business. But fundamentally, each people have different roles in each business, and a lot of those roles may actually be non-fee earning. So if you've got someone in an admin role, for example, like this person here, who is 100% not fee earning, you can't really, you have to factor that into your calculation. So there'll always be some admin for everyone within the team. And this person who's 15% non-fee earning may be someone like a manager who's doing fee proposals or going to meet clients and being a bit more facing. And that's basically sort of non-fee earning work, a bit of business development, for example. Off the back of that, you can work out their kind of non-fee earning cost based on their annual cost times the non-fee earning percentage. And that gives you an hourly rate based on the amount of, you know, whether they're part-time or full-time. And there's two other things that are really key that often people miss out. And one is the overhead. So you're going to have to apportion a percentage of the operational costs within the business to each person. And then the third thing, or second thing on top of the hourly rate, standard hourly rate, is their non-fee earning cost. So all of that, those percentages of non-fee earning time has to have a cost as well. So if somebody's non-fee earning, the cost of them in the business has to be then spread over everyone else within the business. So you take your actual person hourly rate, you add your overheads, you add your non-fee earning wages, and then you get the actual hourly rate cost to the business. And it's a significant change. You know, somebody on let's say a £32,000 salary might only be £20 an hour to you as a cost to the company, but you need to be charging them out, or in our case, in this business, for example, you need to be charging them out at about £60 an hour to actually just break even. So then you should be adding your margin on top of that as well. So hopefully it's been a whistle-stop tour to kind of increasing your prices, looking at hourly rates, and structuring your team. And I guess it comes down to business modeling and actually making sure that your business model is profitable, that if your team are performing as they should be, you will actually generate the profit margins that you expect to make.
Just touching on another element of pricing, because we're obviously talking about what we're putting out in the market, and you mentioned it with the clients where they love our speed, but we might be slightly more expensive than their other option, or our quality and speed is better. And I just wanted to talk about like the golden triangle, which is speed, quality, and cost. And if you can understand where you sit within that market, so XP Surveys is a quality, fast service. And we believe, because we're quite a lean business, we're priced slightly better than most out there that are delivering the same product in that respect. I just wanted to touch on that, because even though pricing might be slightly different, you've got to consider the other factors that you're offering to create that win-win solution, because the consumer might want just quality, quick work. And another thing to consider is also like volume pricing. So it's almost linearly proven. The more expensive your item is, the less volume you do. On the other hand, if you have low pricing, you need to create volume. So two other things to think about in the market when you're pricing your product. Not necessarily what Ben's sharing is how you should reverse engineer your modeling internally to get to your product pricing, to make sure that you're actually making a profit, as that's part of your cost. But what I'm mentioning is the actual cost of the product or the service.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. I won't touch too long on this, but I had a really interesting conversation with Sam and Al. Sam's actually, I've known him from sort of Southwest London property networks for a long, long time. And we actually designed his house extension in Tooting, which happened to be on the end of the road that I was living at the time. So he's a client of Aura. He's an ex-carpenter, but he's also a property developer and has been for a number of years. And he's raised significant amounts of external equity into the schemes that he's worked with. So he's paired up over the last couple of years with a guy called Al, who is actually an ex-professional golfer. And they started the Raising Finance Talks podcast about a year ago. There's about 16 episodes, I think, on there. So do head over. But I had a good chat with them. They came into the Aura office earlier this week, and they are launching very soon a product, effectively, a community, a package course, I guess you could call it, all about raising finance, how to approach it, the mindset that you need, and mindset changes that you need to make in order to actually, flip the switch. And I know a lot of people struggle with, why would people invest in me? How am I going to do this? How am I going to raise millions of pounds? But you need to flip your mindset there, and they'll help you work on that. They'll talk about the approach to raising finance, or how you should and shouldn't approach things, selling stroke not selling, i.e. that there's various ways that you can sell without actually being really pushy and salesy, and for me, I always find that the best way forward. I think you're building rapport and kind of trying to earn the sell before you've even mentioned your product just keeps people a lot warmer and are more likely to buy your product if they know, like, and trust you, and that's how you sell without selling. Outside and inside, and this is something, Jack, we should have a talk about, because they did raise a very good point, and we've been focusing hugely on going out and finding new investors and trying to build our book of investment to raise larger pools of funds. But I think we should be looking at our database and actually probably going through every single person and reaching out and seeing if either their circumstances have changed, or they know someone else that could help us at the level that we're that we're looking for. And those are already warm leads, and the conversion rate on anyone that is introduced through that existing network is going to be far greater than sort of building those new relationships with outside parties. So I think that was a really good way of looking at it. There's a lot of compliance when it comes down to raising equity, FCA compliance, and that's something that they'll teach. And if ultimately kind of they want to build a community of people that are property developers, property investors that want to go out and raise significant funds that don't necessarily know how to do it at this point. And it's going to be launching soon. So if you want an intro to them, do let us know, and we can pass on their details. Cool. On to the big one.
See, yeah, I don't know if my mic is actually bad. I thought I could hear feedback on the other one as well.
I could, yeah. It wasn't your mic. It was something else.
Maybe I'll try and speak a little bit quieter and closer.
Yeah, that's a bit better. It's a
Is it
planning
broken?
system. Yeah.
I googled the average time for a planning application, and the first thing that came up was a Google was a .gov link within 8 weeks. Apparently, in most cases, planning applications are decided within 8 weeks. In England,
Bollocks.
for unusually or complex applications, the time limit is 13 weeks. Now, to put that in days, it's 91 days if it takes 13 weeks. And from that little actual fact sheet that I've got on the right-hand side there, the average decision time is nowhere near 91 days.
This is bollocks. Like, honestly, I cannot believe these are actually true. Like 2022 in London, the average decision day 74 days. So that's like halfway between. That's like 10 weeks, right? Yeah, just over 10 weeks.
Yeah, and annoyingly, this will be pulling applications for like a dormer and a
but even that, like that, rarely is it before 8 weeks, right? Normally it goes to the wire and it will be on 8 weeks.
Yeah,
which means that they're saying it's only 2 weeks
days.
Yeah. So I mean, they're basically saying the average decision time is only 2 weeks late, and
I agree with you.
I just cannot believe these figures.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I did want to bring it up, and that's just some stats to get up on the screen, whether we, because what we see is it's never anywhere near in time. I mean, there's only one borough that's actually ever put an application through on time, and that's Vale of Whitehorse, and I've had a few of them on time.
Yeah.
But every other borough is an absolute shit show, and that was the main topical point for UKREiiF. Everyone that we were bumping into, it was the topical point, and we, in the talk that I was talking about, sort of breaking barriers down for SME property developers and getting the housing. So we're nowhere near our housing supply. our average over the last 3 years is something like 30% of delivery is what we're achieving, and we're never catching up. The issue is when we're doing a third of what we need to every year, that's 2/3 that we're not then behind next year. So it was interesting to listening to talks, and slightly aggravating in some respects, because the Homes England guy was talking about greyfield sites, which is basically green belt sites, but we've gotten to a point now, because that was decided quite a while ago, and is somewhat dated, sort of blanket area that could not be touched. They're saying that there's some areas within that green belt that could be developable, and it would fall into grey belt, and that would then push more land into the potential process of developers like us being able to get sites. But the issue is, the funnel is the bottleneck is, which is the funnel, is planning approval and planning consents. And if you add more liquid into that, i.e. the land, it doesn't make building quicker. The limit is planning applications, and that's really what needs to be sorted.
I really like that term, that grey, grey field, because it steers people away from, as soon as you mention greenbelt, people think luscious trees and open space, and in reality that's just not the case. Like, there are plenty of sites in the greenbelt and within open space where it's exactly that. It's grey. You've got I was looking at a massive plot of land that was an old nursery, like a vegetation type nursery, and it was full of half built buildings or half knocked down buildings, and it was just a mess. And that type of site is just ideal. It was right on the edge of a settlement. It was clearly previously developed to some shape or form, but because it was in the green belt, nothing's going to happen there, or not. Previously, nothing would have happened there. And I just think there are so many areas that are in the green belt that are clearly very good for development. But as soon as you say it's in the green belt, it's a no-no. Whereas I think if we can get that grey field mentality or terminology out there, I actually think that's quite a good thing for us.
Yeah. So some sort of highlights from this particular panel and talk that I went to. So the developer, who was Eleanor Dealey from the Dealey Group Developers, Google them if you want to have a look. They do a bit of everything: PRS, care homes, private stock, social stock. They've been operating for 85 years, and they're currently operating at a third of delivery to when they're at their sort of critical mass and delivering as a healthy amount. So that what I've done there is they've averaged how much they've delivered per annum, and currently they're delivering a third of what they would normally deliver per annum, and that's one developer based sort of in the Midlands, and have been operating for 85 years. Another stat from Neil Jefferson, the Home Builders Federation, they did a poll within the Home Builders Federation why the biggest limitation for the national home builders to get on their sites, and 50% of them were planning issues. So, let's say in the National Home Builders Federation, which is probably making up best part of 70% of the home delivery in the UK, 50% of those sites that are stuck in unit numbers are stuck because of planning. And this one was the one that I was most shocked about. So the housing target in the UK is 300,000 homes per annum is what we need to be hitting consecutively and continuously to hit our target. There is 160,000 sites that are stuck in planning because of neutrality. So that's 160,000 homes, which is technically what we need. If that was resolved, or most part resolved, that would be half of our housing supply in a year done and resolved. Which is a crazy stat to make up such a portion of the market. And for listeners out there that are unaware of water neutrality, it's issues of developing within predominantly coastal towns with the neutrality of water. And it's comical that a lot of people are actually in belief that the development of housing and construction isn't actually the issue, or going to make the issue worse. So much so. So it was really interesting hearing politicians and people that have been in 85 years talk about the issues of planning, because I kind of feel like we moan about it, Ben, because it's just holding us up because we're ambitious and we're active, and that's that. But they're talking from experience and saying how bad it is now and how much worse it has got. And quite frankly, it's interesting to hear some of the solutions that they've been coming up with. One of the potential solutions is ring fencing the actual costs of planning and Section 106, because at the moment it can get distributed into different areas of the councils and government. Because you look at, for an example, I think it was Zaf, who's a guy who's in Ben's Developers Club. He was saying that one of his sites is something like a £6 million 106 contribution. Like, that's a big chunk of money for one application to be refunded and pushed in. But my argument on the panel that I spoke about, on, is the problem with public sector is it's a really leaky bucket. You can kind of chuck as much money as you want at it, but the problem actually becomes, because it's public, that bucket is always going to leak fast, way faster than a private company, because that person would get sacked if they're not doing what they should be doing, and there's lack of client care. So I actually completely believe that beyond a certain level of units, it should be private, because it would just take so much resource. If you've got a 300, 400, 500 unit scheme that necessarily hasn't been put in the allocation or the local plan, then why isn't that going private? Alternatively, and this Dealey lady made the suggestion, have one planner for sites that are sort of between 2 and 30, because they'll get into a rhythm and understand what those applications look like, what the constraints look like, and get really familiar with the actual players in their boroughs, and get really familiar with dealing with those applications. Whereas the planning officers that we're dealing with are dealing with a loft extension for Mr. and Mrs. Smith, then a 15 unit application for us, and then also getting roped in for some strategic stuff, which is 200 units, on the Eastern Bypass. So no wonder they're stretched thin. Anything to add, Ben?
Yeah, one of my suggestions was the sort of siloing those funds for more resources, but I do agree. There's no point in siloing it there if it's going to just be pissed away. But it will help, because more resources absolutely needed. They're just overrun with just not efficient with their time, for one, but they are under resourced and understaffed. So privatizing the system or part of it would be a good way of doing it. More on the ground stuff, but I would just like it to be a bit more personal again. It's the sort of thing. I'm just going to mute because I can hear a bit of reverb. It's the sort of thing where I used to, probably 4 years ago, be able to pick up the phone with the planning officer and just have a chat and just sound them out and get a bit of instant feedback. Whereas now I could literally wait 3 weeks for back and forth on email and still not get anywhere. Whereas a 5-minute conversation on the phone would resolve a huge amount of issues. So yeah, I'd like a bit of that back, or whether it's half an hour a week that there's an opportunity to speak on the phone and not disrupt too much, but there's a dedicated period of time in the week whereby you can actually have a phone conversation with the planning officers, as opposed to just going back and forth on email and hiding behind that. I've got another stat as well. You mentioned about the sort of 300,000 homes per year that need to be built to actually keep up with what's needed. They only approved in 2023 269,000 homes. So we're already 10% below what's needed, and that doesn't factor in actually developing them out. How many of those homes actually just fall through or just aren't feasible, or I'd imagine probably half of that isn't actually feasible. So we need to be seriously kind of approving a lot more than £300,000 a year to even stand a hope in hell of curbing it a little bit. So we're way off the pace. There's a lot that needs to happen. And I actually, listening to your Ground Up podcast, I think it might have been Dorian who made a really good point. Whereas it is a bit of a generational thing. Like the sort of the next generation of people kind of moving into these spaces probably will look to technology to improve the process, to make it quicker, make it more streamlined. And I think that's only a good thing. I just wanted to actually, because I think I've figured out why these figures are so wrong on the screen. And if you look at in 2021, the average decision time was 101 days. And in 2002, it dropped down to 74 days, which is almost like a 30%, performance increase, which on the face of it sounds great. And, it looks like actually the planners are doing an amazing job and the decision date is decreasing. But what's happened here, and I can tell you that between 2021 and 2022, they got way hotter on the, you make the application and they register the application, validate the application. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. But what happens now is it's some dog's body who validates it. They don't validate it because you're missing a scale bar, or one of your elevations is, missing a title or something stupid like that. And it holds up the validation of the application. So there could easily be 3 or 4 weeks, which is the difference between the 101 days and 74 weeks, where they're just basically not validating the applications. So yeah, maybe it looks better on paper, but I'd love to see the figures of from actual, application submission to decision, as opposed to just validation to decision, because I think that would be the deficit. There you go. There's my rant.
We've actually got a question in, which I think you could answer quite well, from Jimmy.
Cool. In my area, there's a policy about splitting properties. I have planning approved to extend my house. Can I go back to planning to split the design that has been approved but not yet implemented? No, sadly not. The house actually, and this is quite common, and the figure itself varies between London boroughs. If you're in London, some councils want, if your house is less than 130 square meters, then they won't typically allow you to subdivide, and some other councils are 150 square meters, I think. And if it's below 150 square meters, they won't want you to subdivide it. But if you're going to go down that route, you may have to do the extension and build it, and then maybe go back in for planning to then try and split it. But you might want to just check whether or not, because I can't actually remember the exact policy, but there may be a policy that says just like PD, where it has to be the original house footprint. There may well be an original house footprint policy for this subdivision as well, but I don't think there is. So I do think if you are extending and then going back for planning once the extension is built, you may actually get more chance of success of the subdivision. But yeah,
I'd also say to listeners, be careful out there if you do an application, because some really savvy councils could actually remove some permitted development rights after you've implemented a full planning application. As something I always shit myself about, that when I go to extend or convert a garage on an HMO, they then remove permitted development rights for the rest of it. So definitely something to be conscious of. It kind of ties in with this, with like muddying the water with two different, one policy and one full planning application.
Yeah, we got stung on that with an Aura project, which seemed on the face of it like a really simple loft extension. But basically, when the whole housing estate was approved, I think it was back in the 1970s, and there's that time frame wasn't available on the planning portal. So kind of, if you look on the planning portal, you see the history. It seems fine and seems like PD rights are available. You can just do a standard 40 meters cubed loft extension under permitted development, for example. But in the 1970s approval, there was a stipulation in the conditions that permitted development rights were removed effectively. And we had to go through the full planning application process, which then got rejected. And we had to, reduce the size of the dormers and the extension, all this sort of stuff. So yeah, sometimes if you're working with a planning consultant, what they might do is reach out to the local council and ask for all of the previous planning histories, even the historic stuff which isn't shown on the planning portal, to review and give you the best chance of success on your application.
Good question, though.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. Any other things to know on the planning system? Anything else that was interesting from UKREiiF about how to solve it?
What was really interesting is the panel that I spoke on had two development companies. One was owned by Bristol Council and one was owned by Hertfordshire Council, actually. So they own their own private companies. All the profits from those private companies feed back into the council. And what was kind of nice is knowing that they have to go through the planning process. because they see how much of a shit show it really is. And they've got an interest in it. They've got interest to get the profit out of projects as soon as they, can really. So that was an interesting panel topic conversation that we've had. And there was suggestions of taking it completely national, so national rulings, which I don't know. I think that would remove a lot of the NIMBYism, because it wouldn't be as localized, and maybe that's bad for us as a person, because your home might eventually suffer value loss if an estate gets built next to you and you don't have a say. But it would cut to the crap, and you could crack on and deliver a lot more, and it would be a lot more consistent. It would basically be like the appeal process, but the process. I mean, with these types of things, I would at the table, at the planning table, I said I feel like if you completely forgot everything that's been created and think of something new, that's probably a better way to go about it, because what has been around for years isn't working. And I feel like we need two processes. We need a long-term process, which is to completely change it and make it more efficient. And we need a short-term process, because we can't have 160,000 homes that are not being built from a neutrality or just blanket. It's not like they've assessed an area and it's it's got exposure to water neutrality. It's just a blanket pause, which is obviously, a cop-out in terms of an action. So I was like, I think we need a short-term and a long-term goal. I personally think that some of it should be private. How can you expect a public company to have someone so experienced do such an infrastructure gig on, a huge development that might take 5 years to deliver? The average job turnover expectancy in the councils is like 6 months. That's going to be like 15 different planning officers working on a very strategic, high level gig. So I do think that there should be an element of privatization on it. The homeowners extensions, great. There's a lot of it is easy common sense. I also think a lot of it should be AI integrated, because if you actually, believe it or not, say to ChatGPT-4, this is my property address, what am I planning? Can you tell me about planning policy within my local area against the property that I have? It's actually quite clever in what it can pull up and tell you about conservation areas, potential, buildings around you, the actual planning policies that have been brought out in the planning framework. And that's ChatGPT. That back in the day was a planning consultant that would help you deal with the planning officer. So I do think they should be relying more on a tick box exercise in certain areas if it fits this criteria. And, for example, permitted development, if you tick a box that you're doing less than a 3-meter extension and you're putting a shed in the garden that's X amount of height and X amount of depth, and you tick that box, why can't that be completely automated so you get a decision when you've made the application?
Yeah, there's no reason why it can't be, really, with today's technology and processes and AI and that sort of stuff. So yeah, one day maybe that'll be the day. Probably long after we've actually got out of the property game. But anyway, yeah, it's a broken system. If you have any ideas, please do let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the listeners' thoughts on what they would think would improve the planning process. I think that's topical.
Yeah, nice. And as always, thanks for listening. It's been the Property Experts podcast. It's your chance to learn from multi-award winning business owners and property developers, myself and Jack. If you've got any comments, do let us know. Please do like and share. And if there's nothing else from you, Jack, we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, I was just going to say we're working on a really cool video that is going to be uploaded on our YouTube channel at some point. So make sure you head over to our page and subscribe so that you get a notification when this really cool video comes out. Obviously, you'll get our lives anyway, but it's a bespoke video we've been pulling together. So a little bit of a teaser for that, but we've spent a lot of time and effort putting it together, and we're super excited for it to be launched. Date TBC, but go over and subscribe now and you will be notified.
Nice. And hope everyone has a great bank holiday weekend, and speak to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.